All right. Good evening, everybody. Sorry, good evening for me. Good morning for all of you in Europe for our first Corporate Communications online event. My name's Chris Lukianenko, and I'm the host and the creator of the Intelligent Workplace podcast here at LiveTiles, and I'll be hosting this event today. Now, we've started this new weekly event series in response to the situation we all currently find ourselves in. It's fair to say that the world's an extremely different place to what it was only a few weeks ago, and as a result, the business world has changed greatly. These sessions are designed to appeal to corporate communicators, which is quite a broad term, and by that I mean everyone from C-suite employees delivering messages to the outside world, to the comms team members drafting those messages, and even the HR professionals crafting the internal narrative to ensure that our employees are feeling supported and are able to continue to do their job. Now, this is an interactive session. If you want to ask a question during the session, feel free to do so via the app here, and I'll monitor those and I'll ask them on your behalf of our guest speaker. And speaking of, it's now time to welcome Paul Conneally to the microphone. So he is joining us from Sligo with a beautiful background there today, which puts mine to shame here in the study at home. He's the head of global communications at LiveTiles with over 20 years of experience in crisis communications. Paul is the former head of communications and partnerships for the ITU, the United Nations Agency for Information and Communications Technologies, where he pursued his passion for digital inclusion and tech for good. Prior to that, he led the public communications department for the International Red Cross Red Crescent and worked on the ground in dozens of challenging contexts with conflict and disaster affected communities, including Afghanistan, Sudan, Haiti, and most recently, Iraq and Myanmar. Paul is passionate about empowering people to collaborate and tell their stories, harnessing technology for positive impact, and advocating for greater diversity and inclusion in the world of tech. Welcome, Paul.
Thank you, Chris, and good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us.
I am looking forward to doing this session with you today, mate. We've done one this morning for the Australian crowd, so it's great to then be able to share this with Europe. Click over. These slides are going to work. There we go. So for those of you that may not know too much about us, we're a global company specializing in employee collaboration and communication software and services and AI for the workplace. And as you can see there, we are all over the globe. I'm currently sitting down in Hobart, Tasmania, Australia, and we've got Paul in Sligo, Ireland tonight. It's this morning. I've got to keep saying it's this morning over there. So yeah, we are global, and currently we are all working from home, practicing social isolation. Now, the agenda for today is pretty simple. Bit of an interview style conversation between myself and Paul, and there'll be no death by PowerPoint, I can promise you that. So what we'll be discussing today, so we're in a current global state of emergency. We'll touch on the global situation and hear from Paul about some of his experiences in the past. We're going to look at how to ensure that no employee is left behind. It's something we're really big on here at LiveTiles, and it's the employee experience. And look, in the current climate, this has changed drastically. So we'll look at how you can ensure that you keep this top of mind. We'll take a look at working from home as the new normal. I put a poll up as you were all entering the room today, and 90% of people, myself included, working from home. So this is our new normal, and we'll dive into that. And then we've got a bit of a checklist towards the end there where we'll get Paul's thoughts on some of the must-haves, the must-dos for these situations we find ourselves in. And finally, I'll send you away with a few resources, tools, and solutions to help you back in your business. Now, that's a pretty packed agenda. We'll try and get that through inside 30 minutes. We did it in about 40 this morning, so we'll see if we can speed it up a little bit for you. And as I said before, this is an interactive session, so you can either ask questions during the presentation, or we can have some time for Q&A at the end. Now, let's take a look at this. This is the latest view of the coronavirus spreading over the globe, thanks to the Bing COVID-19 tracker. Pretty scary. Now, we pulled this image last night with 199,000 confirmed cases. This morning it was at 216,000. I think it's more like 230 right now. So, as I said in the opener, Paul has dealt with a lot of natural disasters and human crises in the past. I'm not so sure about you in the audience, but I know for myself, I find it really, really difficult to truly understand the magnitude of something like one of these situations. And in particular, what we're seeing here in front of us is the Haiti earthquake crisis. This is a picture of Port-au-Prince in 2010, and this is where Paul was involved. So, Paul, maybe you can share with everybody here a little bit about some of your experiences during this crisis.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. So yeah, Haiti, of course, that was already 10 years ago in 2010, and I was part of the International Red Cross operation that arrived there for emergency response. I was there on day 2, and I mean, it was an incredible scene in front of us of a city entirely devastated, as if it had been just picked up and thrown violently back down again. Everything was destroyed, including our own infrastructure, our warehouses, a lot of the homes of our staff, our offices, etc. So the normal playbook and modus operandi for dealing with an emergency like that was completely torn up and thrown out the window, and we had to adapt very quickly and really, you know, nail down our response given the circumstances we were confronted with. So there were many lessons learned from that experience, which have been carried on to the future and are, you know, really deeply ingrained in how emergency response is done today. But just to pull out a couple of them that are relevant to our current crisis. In Haiti, in that context, we realized that some 80% of the people had a mobile phone. So this was an amazing resource for us to try and tap into. Initially, we were thinking of, you know, just one-way communications, SMSing people around different alerts and, you know, different programs that we wanted them to be aware of. But actually, the real secret sauce was when we pushed for a two-way dialogue with the communication, you know, the two-way dialogue at scale, which gave us such rich content and rich data to have a program that was essentially done in partnership with the people themselves. And why is that important today? Because, you know, we have a community, let's say for the organizations and businesses that are on this webinar. We have a community of employees that are out there, completely distributed across different locations, both nationally and internationally. And it's the technology such as mobile communications and digital workplace technologies that will allow us to connect that workforce and really engage them as we go forward and you know, try to make sense of this crisis and keep our businesses and organizations running smoothly. A second sort of important lesson for the humanitarian and development community at that time in Haiti was, and it may seem obvious today, but was the absolute critical importance of information. We started to see information very differently when we were getting it at such you know, such a wealth of quantity of information directly from the people themselves. So today we would see information as critical as electricity, as water, as food, as shelter, when you're in a crisis situation such as Haiti. And all of those lessons that we learned have been pulled right through to best practice now in humanitarian development. So in the most recent crisis, for instance, that I would have been personally involved in Rakhine and in Myanmar, and also on the other side of the border in Bangladesh, the first thing we do when we go in is we map out the media environment in terms of how people are getting their information, how they're using technology, because that's the first and fundamental step if you're to really tap into that powerful community of users that you need to partner with in order to make your operation a success.
And it's interesting to hear you describe that photo there as if a town has been lifted up and then thrown back down on the ground, because I was actually having this discussion with my children tonight over dinner, and I was sort of relaying these stories of yours, and I sort of described it as when you build a Lego village and you knock it off the table and just, you know, everything just crumbles, and that's exactly what we had there. It must have been just absolutely shocking.
It was of course very difficult situation, but again, it was the ability that technology, particularly mobile communications in this case, gave us to partner with the community to have a really relevant and timely response. So we were doing things that we would normally never do. So for instance, the very first operation we did, or at least amongst the very first, was to provide diesel to radio stations for their generators, because people craved information and the radio stations was no power in the country. So that wouldn't have been a typical reflex from an international response operation. But because we had, really excellent data coming from the people themselves, we knew what the most urgent needs were for them, and information ranked amongst the very top.
It seems a long way away from that to where you are now, but there, as we're going to talk about today, there are so many things that you did back then that come with you in terms of skills that you can apply to the current situation. So, mate, thank you very much for sharing that story. That is just fantastic. Now, look, we'll move on and we'll talk about employees here. And I said before that the employee experience during these times is vitally important. You can have the greatest platform in the world, but it's not going to solve, engagement and isolation issues for you, because that takes effort. In some ways, you need to manufacture the human factor that gets removed when you bring technology in. The water cooler chats, the meetings over coffee, the casual sort of conversations. You really have to make plans for this when you're dealing with this and your employees are now working from home, don't you, mate?
No, absolutely, and I mean it's going to be very challenging for a lot of organizations and businesses to deal with this situation where everybody is working from home and everybody is working remotely. I mean, it's not such a new concept as such. We've all worked from home at times. Maybe some people do it all the time, but it's highly unusual that every business, every organization is on a path to to complete remote working scenarios. So there will be challenges there to manage that, and chief amongst them, in terms of it being a foundational aspect that you need to get right, chief amongst them will be engaging your employees, that community of employees that you need to keep engaged, and having the platforms in place, but also the culture in place to ensure that that inclusion of people is first and foremost in your mind, and that nobody's sort of falling off the grid. But also you'll probably see a lot of interesting and organic viral grassroots activity happening on your internal networks. And that's something really to look out for, and to encourage and to facilitate and enable people to be creative and to be social in the workplace environment that will now become more the norm than it has been before the crisis.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. Now let's move on and talk about knowing the people that are actually in your workforce. So, we talked about there, we don't want to be leaving them behind, and to do so in these situations, and knowing your employees, who they are, where they are, and what they do, and how to contact them is absolutely key. A colleague of ours that I was speaking with yesterday likened it to a fire drill roll call at school. It's when you're at school, it's pretty simple in that situation. You've got a list of kids' names, you know that they've all been there. You call out their names and they say yes or no, whether they're in the playground or not. But with what we've got now, with these globally dispersed workforces, it's very easy to forget someone that might be a one-man band out the back of Ireland, say, or Hobart, Tasmania. It's easy to forget who they are and where they are and what they're doing. So people data is absolutely critical for success here, isn't it?
Absolutely, it's a 101 issue in normal circumstances, but most particularly in emergency and crisis situations, or when there's been a major disruption. I mean, not knowing who people are, not knowing how to reach them, not knowing what skills exist across your organization is a major barrier to effective collaboration. So that's something that all businesses and organizations need to get right from the get-go if you're to really maintain the levels or even exceed the levels of collaboration and productivity that would have been the case before this current COVID-19 crisis. Many organizations and businesses will already admit that their employee directories, their employee information isn't best in class. It's quite often outdated. You don't want to be losing opportunities for collaboration or productivity because of that. And that's something that all organizations and businesses really need to get right if this scenario, particularly in this scenario of global remote working, if we're to make that work for us.
Yeah. Oh, looks like I might have messed up this slide here. Apologies for that. But that actually talks about using secure communication and collaboration platforms. And I guess the point I wanted you to make here, mate, is that from when you were working in Haiti and you're having to rely on mobile phones, online communication platforms have come a long way, haven't they?
No, for sure. I mean, the ability for people to have a device in their pocket, both those that were part of the crew and in the community that we needed to, to work with and to support. That was a major game changer in terms of giving us the ability and the platform to have that sort of seamless communication. Things have improved vastly over the last 10 years. I mean, now most organizations will have their own internal digital workplace platform or intranet, more commonly known. Some of them, relatively basic, others might have all the bells and whistles, but it's so important to have that secure platform that people can congregate on, that people can go and find the information they need to do their jobs. And again, going back to the previous point on, knowing who's who in the crew and being able to easily find people and source skills, these two things come together, right? We know it's not only about the technology, it's really about the people, but you need to bring those two together on a good platform that will really help to keep things moving smoothly in a way that's intuitive, and that gives a really great user experience for people as well.
Apologies there. Which sort of brings me to our next slide here, which is something from our workplace. This is internal to ours. So just a bit of a window, if you like, into our new normal here at LiveTiles. We're obviously globally distributed. Some people do remote working anyway, but now the whole workforce is working from home. And this is one of the ways here that we're staying connected. You can see here on the screen, these are actual screenshots that people are in our workforce are sharing via our mobile communication platform. It's really helping us to stay in contact and remain really positive. But look, it's not easy for everyone. For every smile that you're seeing here and every shot of people's cats and whatever, there's going to be someone out there who is maybe unproductive. They could be scared, they could be anxious, feeling isolated. We really need to look after our people, and this is just one way that we can do it, isn't it, Paul?
Yeah, and in this instance, it's the people or the community of employees that are showing us the way in terms of what's possible or what works and what's sticky in the workplace in terms of employee engagement. I mean, it's very important to keep remembering that this is utterly new for many people. And from the corporate communications point of view, but from senior management, it's extraordinarily important that we really do the utmost to include all members of the workforce, and it is that opportunity to bring people in that would normally have been maybe part of the day-to-day as well, frontline workers and others. This is really a special opportunity for businesses and organizations to sort of flatten out that and really bring everyone in. It's a moment and an opportunity to do that. What I like about this example as well, going back to the earlier point around how how important it is to enable and empower and include the community, but stepping on from that, you will learn as an organization from the community in terms of its behavior and what it's doing and what it's interested in. So in this case, I mean, this is a real great example in our own company of a sort of a grassroots virality, something very organic that has taken off, with dozens and dozens of people sharing their remote working situations at home and photos of them, and it's developing into all sorts of subplots and sub stories. And so our community of employees is telling us that this is important. This is a moment for connection, for sharing, for creativity, for humor. And that's going to be so important to retain that human connection and to enable employees to be able to do this and to be able to create organic stories such as this one. I mean, I think that's really one of the most important things from a corporate communications, internal communications, operational point of view that we'll start learning in this current scenario, and that we really need to encourage.
Yeah, absolutely. It has been really important. You can see there's a lady by the name of Kat who has really been sort of driving that organic organic sort of element to what we've been doing internally with this. It's been fantastic to see. Really, really pleasing.
Yeah, I mean that's an important one. There will be colleagues who maybe really step up to the challenge or just emerge more than they may have done in the physical working environment, and they might emerge as influencers, community moderators, without the official title of that. And that's really important from the corporate comms point of view as well, to encourage that, because without that, those individuals, those influencers, those moderators, sort of greasing the wheels of the conversation, it can fall a bit flat. So, but that'll only happen if people feel they have the right tools, the trust, and are enabled and empowered to do that internally. And that's really, that's really when it takes off. It's when the community itself starts running with those conversations.
Yeah, and look, it's working for us. It's not falling flat for us at all. I think I posted 5 pictures of my cat today and saw about 30 dogs on those pages on the mobile comms platform. So it's been really good, actually. Certainly helped make things less difficult at home. So, mate, let's sort of in a little bit of a mini wrap up here. Let's go through this checklist here, that is a bit of a mix of your go-to strategies or from your playbook. Do you want to go through them here for us, mate?
Yeah, I'll go through them very quickly, and it's not an exhaustive checklist by any means. And after these webinars, we'll put together some of the key learnings in a blog and share with people, as well as the inputs and the great feedback we're getting from our own customers as well right now, and our own community online and social media and stuff. But the first one, very basic, the 101, and this is quite often something that isn't owned by anyone in an organization, maybe HR, for instance, but really from a communications point of view, it's absolutely essential that you got that people data if you want to realize the ideal projects and plans and initiatives, and really facilitate that organic communication internally as well. You got to know who the people are, where they are, and what their skills are. So get that sorted, and make sure you have the platform in place, the solutions in place to do that, and not something that's too labor intensive, but that can essentially be automated. The second one, ensuring you have a good online communication and collaboration platform. This is likely in these moments, these weeks, it's not the time to start with new big IT projects, but look at what you have there, what you can unlock, what you can leverage. If you're on Office 365, there'll be, for instance, lots of opportunities to unlock things like Microsoft Teams and start using that as a crisis communications channel. There's ways and means of doing that, but a secure channel that's user-friendly, that people are familiar with, that has a mobile app version as well, that's mobile optimized. These are really, really important, so that you can have that continued and intuitive connection with people, and that they feel included, and that allows two-way conversations. That's absolutely key. The third one, and this is more, in the crisis comms domain, and I said it in the beginning around, in a conflict or disaster-related situation, information is absolutely critical. And so clear, concise, decisive information is absolutely essential. People will be absolutely depending on getting that clear message from leadership, from management of different organizations. So you need to ensure that that message is getting through. With the remote working, with the digital platforms that people will be using, you can track now exactly, the impact your messaging has had, if it is really being understood. And again, having that two-way conversation and that crowdsourcing ability will allow you to do that with your employee community. And don't worry about over communicating it through different channels and different formats. That's that's part of the mix. In really needing to get the information through, because in a situation like this, if the information is not clear, if it's not predictable and frequent enough in terms of cadence, if decisions are not being made, well, then a gap opens up, a vacuum opens up, and in that vacuum you'll get misinformation, gossip, confusion, rumor, dissatisfaction. So you need to shut that down straight away with clear, concise, frequent information and communicate decisions and take the temperature of your employee community through understanding their feedback, particularly, and their online behavior in your digital workplace as to how that message is getting through, and refine it accordingly. That's absolutely crucial in a moment like this. The fourth one, really important. Every crisis is an opportunity in some respects, and particularly for communications. And I think that while you're working hard and really trying to meet the needs of the organization and ensure all of these issues we've been discussing, such as employee engagement and inclusion of the whole workforce and clear communications, etc., is happening during the time of crisis, be thinking down the road, be thinking, what can I implement in the future that will learn from this crisis? Like, again, one example from what we saw earlier on, learn from the behavior of your community, learn what's sticking, learn what's interesting, learn what's being created by your employees, and understand from that online behavior then what could be really taken and used in an effective way for the organization. It's also an opportunity to really ensure that the sort of strategic communications component of your organization is fully integrated across all departments and teams and offices around the world, depending on your situation, that communications isn't just a time for crisis, but it's something that can be really ingrained in a more strategic way, and particularly for your employees and workforce as we come out of this crisis into hopefully what will be more or less familiar territory in the future.
Yeah, that last point you make, I think, is really, really important. Another one of our colleagues sort of said to me this week that in times of crisis, gaps tend to appear in what you thought were amazing business strategies and plans, and something you thought that was a nice to have today may actually turn out to be a must have very, very quickly in the near future. So I think that's really important to try and find out that balance there between dealing with the now and looking forward to the future.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, I think just to add, Chris, things have utterly changed. We know that, and it won't return to the normal, to what we knew before. It will be different. So the future of our work was anyway changing, but I think this situation has really now accelerated it. So we need to be ready for that, and the best way to be ready for it is to really be cognizant of what's happening in your own workplace in terms of what's working and what isn't, because you will need to learn from this time for more sustainable, longer term digital workplace strategies as we go forward.
Yeah. So, I mean, today's session was all about discussing the situation we currently find ourselves in and drawing upon Paul's background and experiences to find some strategies and solutions to help us move forward. But much like a children's birthday party, we're going to send you away with a little bit of a grab bag here. It's times like these where we need to work together and draw upon the resources that are available to us to get through. So we thought we'd help you out with a few free tools to add to your kit bag that may help your business at this time. So this is what we've come up with for you. And I'll let Paul talk about this in a second, how this is going to work, but we've created a remote working ebook. Now, when will we be sending this out, Paul?
This will be going out to all those that have registered for the webinar, so you'll be getting it exclusively, so to speak. It's hot off the presses. This was something actually we were working on before the current crisis, so it's really packed with a lot of data and some very good substance. We produced it specifically with IT and tech teams in mind, but it's still highly relevant for communications and operations people, because it'll allow you to convene that conversation internally, because IT, of course, is a crucial ally and stakeholder in putting in place all of these issues we've been speaking to, in terms of having the right data for the organization and having the right platform, etc. So I think that can be very useful to have those conversations in organizations. Everybody will be getting a copy shortly after the webinar.
Absolutely. And so those images you saw before, where I talked about our mobile communications app with all the pictures from people working from home and that sort of thing, we're going to give that to you free for a 6-month extended trial. Now, this app is so fast to get up and running, and I'm talking minutes, not days here, to be able to get and start communicating in that way. I won't go into the technical details of how that all works, because that's not my wheelhouse here, but I will tell you that you can contact us and we can talk you through how that will come to life. And I just want to say, for me personally, it's been an absolutely great way to stay in touch this week with our globally dispersed workforce. So hopefully you also could get those kind of benefits in your workforce as well. Next up is the complimentary remote working collaboration and communication software health check. It's a little bit of a complicated way of saying that we'll reach out to you via a mobile method, via a phone call or a Teams chat, and we can give you a remote health check of your current situation and what's going on in your company, and hopefully try to help you out there with some solutions. And leaving the best bit to last, in my opinion, is the Intelligent Workplace podcast. If you haven't checked that out just yet, it might be a nice way to get introduced to that by putting it on in the background while you're working away at your kitchen bench today. It's available on all major podcast providers, and these are interviews between an expert on a topic such as communications, wellness, diversity, artificial intelligence, and storytelling. And on the other side, you've got me, and I'm like the everyday sort of person who is truly inquisitive about what my guests are telling me. I always say that, unlike other tech podcasts, this isn't two big brains competing for who knows the most about the topic, because I'll always lose that. So I take it as the opportunity to learn something along with the listeners. And we're up to about 30 episodes now. And this week I spoke with another crisis communications expert out of Morocco, and that was a great chat. So maybe if you want to follow up with a bit more information after what Paul's given us here, you can have a listen to that as well. But wait, there's still more. Now, that's where you can find the Intelligent Workplace podcast, podcast.livetiles.nyc. So some other tools and solutions that we've got for you here, if you need us. We've got the Microsoft Teams Accelerator services. So Microsoft Teams is obviously free. Excuse me. Apologies there. But implementing Microsoft Teams is actually a fair bit of hard work. There are a lot of decisions you need to make on access, channels, and privacy, and all those sorts of things that can make it the difference between it being a real game changer in your business in terms of communications and not creating something that sort of is a bit more of a hindrance. So we've been doing a lot of work in this area and can help you implement it in the right way and accelerate that sort of introduction into your business. So there's an offer there. We've also got the people data automation robot, which is something we spoke about earlier with in terms of needing to keep your people information up to date and accurate so that you know who they are and what they're up to and that sort of thing. It is a big job, but we have this automated robot that reminds users when their profile is out of date and sends them an email to tell them what is out of date and ask them to update it. And look, it manages things like rules around who can update certain bits of information, like who your manager is and all those sorts of things, and also make sure profile pictures are correct. So you can't put up a picture of an animal or a cartoon and that sort of thing. So it's just all designed to keep everything, up to date and all true. The next bit we've got here is some intelligent meeting software, which is basically just all about making remote meetings smarter. So providing you with the information that you need prior to going into a meeting in a nice, easy to manage format, so that when you get into that meeting, it's all about having the chat right in front of you and you don't have to worry about chasing around for different bits and pieces. And the last one here, I'll hand over to Paul because he's quite passionate about this, which is our HR bot assistance.
Well, yeah, bot assistance in general. I mean, the HR one obviously will help with all of the questions people will have linked to, their leave, their health insurance, remote working policies, support for tech, whatever it might be. But from a communications point of view, I mean, a bot can be adapted to any need that a business has. So, for instance, an FAQ bot for all of the typical questions, it could be 100, 500 questions that employees or customers or partners may have, and this will work for you 24/7 and allow you to focus on all of the, let's say, the more substantive stuff that needs to keep moving as the situation is evolving and as we all adapt to remote working. And in the case of these bots as well, if the question or the issue is not resolved satisfactorily, if it's not already in the database of answers, for instance, it will then be handed to the person who's best placed to answer that. So there's no time lost, and it's good for both internal and external communication and relationships.
And of course, they're on the screen, both Paul and my email addresses. Feel free to jot those down and contact us about anything that we've spoken about here today at all, and we'll get on to that. which leads me now to the Q&A. Usually with these things, we don't get a lot of questions. People are a little bit shy, but feel free to use the app here to ask a question if you like. I'll give you a little bit of a minute just to have a quick think before we move on. But of course, if you don't want to ask a question in this forum, again, feel free to email us, ask questions there, and we can follow those up for you. No dramas. I'm not seeing a lot of action there on the questions, so that's okay. So maybe in the interest of time and getting back to start your busy work days, we might move on. Once again, shoot us an email if you want to ask us a question. So what's next? So I guess apart from encouraging you to explore those free resources that we mentioned a minute ago, I'll also like to invite you back next Tuesday at this same time for a session with our Chief Product Officer, Simon Tyrrell, that smiley looking guy there, and share this invitation with your co-workers who are working in the tech space as well, because I think they'll probably want to see what he's got to show here. So it's a follow-up session to today's session where we will discuss and demonstrate the technology that helps make our lives easier during these disruptive times. Simon's a fantastic speaker, very engaging, and really knows his stuff. So he's great to be able to go through with a demonstration of things such as comms and engagement tools, mobile solutions. We'll talk about extending the functionality of Microsoft Teams with the Power Panel, and also how to rapidly plan and roll out teams to support remote workers. So all really key things at this time. As I said in the open, this is a new weekly event series, which will settle into a Thursday time slot as of next week. And at any time you can jump onto our events page over at livetiles.myc, and you can see what is coming up. So next Thursday at this time, you'll have me back again. I'm going to talk about the power of the podcast and how we've been able to develop one internally that is it's really efficient, it's effective, and it's a really secure way for us to share information with our globally dispersed workforce. And probably the most important thing is it really allows us to have a bit of a human element to everything that we do in these disruptive times. And I'm going to take you through how we sort of set up a bit of an internal system there that allows us to really manage that whole process. So I'll take you through that and how important that is. I might throw over now to Paul for a bit of a last word.
Yeah, well, first of all, really thank you very much to everybody for joining us this morning. I hope it was useful. Feel free to reach out via email or on LinkedIn and to follow LiveTiles on LinkedIn to get notifications of all the future episodes that will be coming up. I think just in terms of, a final last word for myself for today, while we're all going through, unprecedented times, I mean, COVID-19 is something we haven't seen before. From a corporate communications point of view, from a business organizational point of view, nevertheless, it does represent an opportunity to really ramp up the effectiveness of our engagement of our employees. They're the absolute lifeblood of any company and organization. It's a time to really achieve full employee inclusion in the workforce. So don't be afraid to test and to innovate and to learn from the behavior then of the community of employees in terms of what's working and what isn't, and then refine that and keep improving it until you have this really smooth, fully integrated, and also that organic engagement that we spoke about earlier on. So again, thank you so much. I hope it was useful, and we'll be back with plenty of more episodes in the future.
Yes, absolutely. So look, Paul, thank you very much for joining us today to share your experiences and your expertise. That was absolutely fantastic. And thank you to everybody out there for joining us. I did know there was a couple of comments in the questions pane there saying that it was potentially a little bit too early to be thinking that hard about asking a question. So we'll let you off on this occasion. Once again, if you want some more information or assistance, feel free to contact myself, Paul, or your local LiveTiles representative. And hopefully we'll see you all again here next Tuesday for the next session. So I'll let you all go off and start your workday, as it's the morning over there. And I'm going to go and watch a game of footy and have a beer, which has just started tonight. So there you go. Have a great day, and thanks for joining us.
Thank you, everyone.